So we've come to the Hamble on a slightly less than sunny November day to have a test of the new Dehler 46 SQ. Now the 46 isn't a new boat, it's the same hull that Dehler launched in 2014, designed by Udall-Vrolik. That's been a very successful boat for them. As their flagship of the range, 46 is the largest that they produce. SQ stands for speed and quality, so Dehler tell us. But there are a number of changes that have been made that are designed to enhance both comfort of living on board, a little bit of window dressing as always goes on, but also some genuine changes to how the boat handles, performs, and some of the characteristics that make a real difference to cruising sailors and the people who want to push it a little bit faster. So let's have a look. Starting at the bow, you've obviously got the same plumb bow, but they've added on an enlarged bowsprit for off-wind sails, and they've also reinforced it with a little bottle screw bobstay on the anchor arrangement. That's so you can really get proper tension on Code Zero sails and other sails that really need some decent luff tension. They've added in a flat deck furler so that the head sail is as close to the foredeck as possible for performance enhancement, get the sails working a little bit more efficiently. Other than that, largely the boat is laid out exactly the same. There are options for improved performance, so you can get a taller carbon rig, you can get a T keel, competition keel, to improve the performance there. There are a few cruising touches that you can have if you want. So they now offer, which is quite interesting, a flying forestay. So you can have an inner stay for a storm jib. Not many new cruising boats offer that. And you can also add in an arch over the cockpit for the main sheet, so you don't have the main sheet going through the cockpit where everybody is, it's over the top, keeps families safer, and that also provides stowage for the spray hood. We've got the spray hood up today. We'll keep that up because it's a little bit of a rainy, windy day. We've got gusting over 20 knots out in the Solent. So it should be quite an exciting day for a sail. At the stern you can see Dehler have resisted the temptation to follow the modern trends of hard chines the whole way along. You've still got this nice smooth round hull shape for a nice smooth water flow. At the stern not much has changed, there's some little tweaks, so they've carved some weight out of the bathing platform which folds down, having that electronically operating is an option. They've boosted up the bathing ladder, so that's a bit more solid, and you've got some extra handholds as you're coming out of the water. You've got this manually operated hydraulic backstay adjuster on the sort of 9/10 fractional rig from Selden, and they've also put on some carbon wheels to make the helm feel a little bit lighter. And then we'll have a look at some of the other things that they've added in the cockpit and down below once we're out on the water. Helming back up Southampton water at the moment, and as you can see we're on a run, things are a little bit calmer. It's got quite breezy out there today. We've had 20-25 knots of wind and a pretty heavy rain squall as well. So it's been lively and a really good test for the boat. My impression on the helm is that she's kept control as the gusts have hit us, even when we've had the sail plan a little bit wrong. We're down to 2 reefs now, as you can see, and a couple of rolls in the Genoa. So it's been breezy. We've even had some white water over the deck, so quite lively conditions, but she's been really fun to sail. I've really enjoyed it. She's really engaging and she really rewards decent sail trim. You can feel when you've got the sail trim wrong because the helm loads up, and she does get quite heavy on the helm, but she didn't let go, she didn't broach, she didn't lose control in any way, but she let you know that you needed to sort the sails out. Once you've got the sails set up quite just right, then the helm goes much lighter, you can get her balanced, and she's just lovely and relaxing to sail upwind, even when it's lively conditions. She's got a reasonably wide beam, not the widest in her class by any means, but you notice that's why you have to get the sail trim right. But she's a single rudder boat, along with actually most of the sort of performance cruisers in her size and class, because it gives a much more direct feel and a much better sailing experience, as long as the stern's not too wide. All in all, that's been really good fun today. In terms of the helm position, I've got the footrest down at the moment. When we're going upwind, you'll have seen that, or I can show it to you. We've got good big carbon wheels that are really light and a Dehler steering system that's tight, and there's no play in it, so it feels really good, as you'd expect from a Dehler steering system. I've got instruments just in front of me, a main sheet winch here, which when I'm sitting on the side upwind I can adjust, ease the sheet, no problem. I've also got the traveller control right here to hand, so I've got everything that I need. If I want to do the Genoa by myself, then I'd have to put it on auto and go forwards, but we've been sailing 2 up today, so Phil's been doing that, handling the head sail, and between 2 people it works really nicely. And on this configuration we've also got a 3/4 width traveller. It's not a full width traveller, but it's enough to be able to drop it down the track and spill a bit of power quickly without having to ease the whole main and grind it back on once the squall's gone. Got helm controls just down here, and it feels like a really comfortable place to steer from. Now we've got the boat set up nicely. I've dropped it down the traveller a little bit, and that's just lightened up the load on the helm. Head sail's in nice and tight, so doing about 25-30 degrees to the apparent wind, probably more like 40 degrees to the true, but it just feels great. This is really nice. I'm standing on the fold-up footrest, and it feels really secure on the high side here. In a second I'll go down and just check under the sails. It's also a nice place to sit on the leeward side, and you can really see the head sail then as well. Yeah, I mean it's really well balanced, and we're sailing what, 20-25 knots still. Certainly 25 knots across the deck, 2 reefs in the main, 2 rolls in the Genoa. Oh, just powering along. This is great fun. Right, so just while we're coming back up the river, we're still sailing. Phil's got the helm. I thought I'd just show you around the cockpit a little bit. So we've seen the helm stations. I showed you that while we were sailing. Just one comment on that. At the moment, these haven't got grab rail handles fitted, but it is an option to have a circular handhold there, which when you're moving forwards and aft and across the boat would be absolutely essential in my view. You've got the instrument panels here with a little handhold here, and I can reach the main sheet winch there and the Genoa winch there, so that's all easily to hand. The seats nice and deep, comfortable, reasonably long and straight. You see you've got this little lip here, which means that if you're sitting up on the side and the boat's heeling, you can tuck your heels in there. If you're down here, you've got the cockpit table, which is a reasonably simple construction. It's got a central piece with 2 really big grab holds either side, 2 panels that fold up, but it provides essential bracing in the middle of the cockpit, and it's just the right distance from the seats. Otherwise it would be a really wide open cockpit. You can take the table out if you want to, if you're racing with a crew, but for cruising, it's a really nice piece of furniture in the cockpit. You've got really wide coamings with sloping sides. That makes it really comfortable for crew sitting up when the boat's heeling. We had a bit of green water over the deck, and it takes quite a big wave, but you get a little bit over the side here. They're not the highest coamings in the world, but they did a pretty good job of keeping the green water on the deck, out of the cockpit. Coming forwards, we've got the spray hood here, and we've got halyard winches, halyard tails, and everything led aft to these bank of clutches under the spray hood. This boat hasn't had them fitted yet, but it's got rope bags that will be fitted either side of the companionway. You'll need those. The boat doesn't have rope bins built in anywhere, so you would need the rope bags. But it's a practical, sensible layout. There's nice grip moulding on top of the coamings for when you're stepping out onto the wide side deck. In terms of stowage on deck, underneath here you've got the twin aft cabins, and there aren't any options to not have those. So these cockpit lockers here are just deck depth, so they're not very deep, but they're perfect for covers, lines, all the usual cruising clobber. You've got rope bins and gas lockers further aft. So you've got a gas locker in there, and you've got space either for one bottle and to use it as a rope bin, or you could have 2 gas bottles in there with a spare. And then you also get the lazarettes, so underneath where the lift up foot panels are, footrests are, you've also got either side, you've got 2 cavernous lazarette lockers that are big enough to take dinghy, fenders, lines, whatever extra stuff you've got. And that's one of the real strengths of this boat, is there's just loads of stowage, which is exactly what you want if you're heading off cruising. Right, stepping out to the cockpit, as I said, it's quite wide coamings, but they're not too high, so it's reasonably easy getting out. You've got these decent stanchions here for the gate, which make a nice handhold. It would be quite nice to have a handhold on the spray hood, but you soon get to the handholds on the coach roof. It's a pretty low coach roof, but there are plenty of places to hold on. Here you can see we've got the German main sheet being led aft, and the Genoa cars either side. They're nicely inboard. They're not on the coach roof as some are, but it still gives you a pretty good close-winded seating angle. The shrouds are led outboard to the gunnels, leaving the nice clear walk-throughs, which is great. And you can also see, just while we're up here, these are the opening hatches for the saloon. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 or 5 opening hatches with a little gutter that runs along top above them to stop rainwater getting in when you open them. And unusually these are outward opening hatches, so you've got really large opening hatches all the way along the side of the boat, which I think is a really nice detail. Coming forwards, we've got the towable jib cars. That's the only adjustment on the seating angle. There are no in-haulers on this boat, but that still gives you a fairly good amount of adjustment. And then going forwards, you've got a really good wide foredeck here with lots of working space, and the guard wires, well, there aren't any other handholds, so you've got the guard wires. And then right forwards, you've got the sail locker or fender locker. So that's a really good big locker in there. You can have a look in a second. You've got a good big anchor locker in there with an electric windlass. And ahead of that, you've got this open pulpit, along with the flat deck furler and the attachment point for the off-wind sails. You've got a decent anchor locker here. So you've got your windlass. And importantly, there's a nice deep chain drop underneath the windlass, so you shouldn't get any chain pile-ups. And that goes out underneath the bowsprit onto the anchor roller, which is part of the bowsprit. So it's a really nice, neat solution. Working space at the mast. There isn't loads you need to do at the mast, except for getting the sail up and down. But the coach roof here's got some nice grip moulding. And then you can see here there's also a patch of the synthetic teak that the decks have got on them, which gives loads of grip. You've got a couple of steps there, so that when you're pulling the sail down you can reach up reasonably easily. And that is about it on deck. well, it's nice to get below after a sail like that, and this is a lovely space to come into. You've got good wide steps there, they're beveled, plain unvarnished wood, so they're not slippy, and a couple of really good handholds that bring you straight onto a handhold above here. Actually, this is one of the things that I really like about this boat, is it feels like it's been designed for sailing at sea when you're heeling along on passage and things. So there are grab rails to starboard, there's grab rails on port, there's good big fiddles, so moving around, it's quite a big open space, but moving around, rounded corners, you're not going to bump into things, hurt yourself, and you've got lots of things to hold on to. Anyway, this is the main saloon. We've got a heads to port, we've got two aft cabins behind me, we've got a double forward cabin, well, it's a forward cabin with a big island berth in it, we've got an L-shaped galley to starboard, and then we've got the C-shaped saloon seating to starboard there with a big fold-out table and a seat that has a little fancy trick to port and a chart table as well. So it's a fairly conventional layout, but I think it works pretty well. Let's have a look around. Starting off in the galley, you can see that you've got a fairly conventional galley layout. You've got a double sink in here, which is good because you can wash and dry, leave the stuff to dry in one of them. You've got a top opening fridge. That's great. That fridge also has a front opening here. So open that there and you can get stuff that would otherwise be right at the bottom of the cool box. Just make sure that you've closed the top one before you open the bottom one, otherwise you've lost all of your cold air and the fridge will have to start all over again. Loads of little lockers around here. Got a double bin that slides out there. Pan stowage underneath. Multiple drawers here for pans, plates and crockery. Cupboards behind here, so there's lockers and stowage galore really, which is exactly what you want on a cruising boat. Around this space you've got some bottle and glass stowage just ahead of here. So they've made quite a lot of use of trying to put in these bins and things that are just useful stowage areas. Slight temptation just to shove stuff in them, so you have to keep those tidy, but useful to have stowage spaces. Moving forwards, you've got a few options here. So in this boat, the chart table's been placed forward. It's a nice place to sit and work. I'd want to move that cushion if I was working on a laptop. Lots of people work from home these days. But you've got enough space in there for some Admiralty folios. But I think that so there are two options that actually place the chart table further aft. Here, I haven't got any of my instruments or any of my stowage. I'd rather have the chart table at the aft end. And you can either have an aft-facing chart table here, which I think makes the most sense because you've then got your instruments, radio, and you've also got some stowage units here where you could have a bookshelf for your reference books and things. Or you can have it forward-facing here, but then it breaks up this nice port settee a little bit. As I mentioned, you've got your instruments there, and then there's stowage around the outside of the heads here. This boat definitely majors on bottle and glass stowage, so you're not going to be short of a drink or two when you're cruising, which is nice. And then there's a locker in here. This one's good, but I think could be used a little bit better. It's a really deep locker, and I can't reach the back of it. So either you've got some long, thin things to stow in there, or it'd actually be better to have some top access, or even some sliding drawers that pull out. I just want to show you a little trick as we fold out the saloon table. So the saloon table folds out there, but your friends on port side are a little bit far away. So before you do that, let's move those cushions slightly. There we go. An unusual solution, but I think once it's there, it works quite well. And then you've got space to seat 2, 4, 6, probably 8 people around the table. So that's a really nice sociable solution. Folding that up. It does get a little bit in the way of passage forward and aft, so you'd only really do that once you're sort of properly settling in for the evening. Push the button again. It does also give you a little bit of stowage behind here, access to, you've got some battery chargers in there, some of the electrical systems. Obviously with the electrical systems, you often want to get at the wiring to do some maintenance, add new systems. And you've got quite a neat cubby hole in there, and it's all very neatly wired. It's not the easiest if you wanted to add more systems in. It's not particularly easy to get into there or to see what's going on, but it is all in there, and that's sort of nicely out of the way, and it is accessible. Stowage, there's more stowage under the port bunk here. There's more stowage under the starboard berth here. You've got the domestic battery bank under the middle section here, but the forward end of the saloon seating is stowage again. And then you've got these fold down lockers. They look really nice, and actually from the old 46 they were low down. They've moved them higher up, made space for the hull windows. And I like the fold down from the top, hinged at the bottom, so that when you open it, stuff doesn't fall out. The only slight drawback is the way the hinging has been done means there's this sort of shelf across the middle that's the bottom of the locker. So you lose sort of 10 centimetres of stowage space on all 6 of these lockers. So I think that's a little bit of an oversight. I'd have rather had just a simple hinge along the bottom and then the locker bottom being properly there, so you get more space in those lockers, but that's a minor gripe. As with all these boats these days, you've got lots of interesting lighting that sort of make the boat really feel nice and wide because you've pushed it out to the hull sides, and little bits of trim around the sides, and with the lighting underneath the trim and things. So I think that's a really nice look. This boat's been finished in oak, although teak and mahogany are still options. So the main heads is this one, which is port side. So we've got the lights on in there, and that's a decent sized heads. It's got a separate shower stall forwards, which is really nice. The only thing I think it's lacking is a bit of hanging locker space for wet waterproofs. Probably could add that in, with not too much difficulty, or arguably some of this storage space could be used from the other side for waterproofs. While we're here, let's have a look at the port aft cabin. And this one's got the option of the what they call scissor berths, 2 single berths. These are just under 210 centimetres long, so they're built for proper Scandinavian tall people, so you shouldn't have any difficulty there, and they're up to about 70 centimetres wide. There is an option to have just one berth with stowage on the other side, or you can have this as a double berth, and we'll see what the double berth looks like on the starboard side. Just while we're in here, I'll show you the access to the engine. I think this is really neat. I'd have liked to have seen this door hinged because it's a bit heavy. The whole thing comes off and gives you access to the engine bay. In the starboard aft cabin, you've also got some stowage here. Nice little shoe locker, boot locker, and a locker here with some shelves, some hanging locker space as well. So there's enough space for a couple of people for a few days. Starboard side aft, you've got a really good big double. At the head end, it's 170 centimetres wide and it's 205 centimetres long, so plenty of space. You've got similar locker arrangements to on port side, boot lockers, full length shelf, and decent amounts of ventilation as well. In the forward cabin, you've got a similar theme. You've got these lovely hull windows that you can sit up in bed and look out of. You've got a little dressing table, lockers in there. The water tanks are under this berth, and the fuel tanks are under the starboard aft berth. This is water under there, so there's not loads of stowage under there, but you've got plenty of other lockers outboard here. And this bed is 205 centimetres long, so plenty long enough for most tall people. And then inside here, you've got the owner's forward cabin heads, which has got this really interesting curved door on it, which makes a really clever use of the space. So in the forward cabin, you've got the ensuite heads, which has got a sink and locker area, a toilet on the outboard side, and then it's got a separate shower stall as well. Access to the bilges is really good. They're fairly shallow bilges, as you'd expect from a performance cruiser. But you use a little sucker to lift up the panels. And then here you can see we've got the keel bolts, really solid, easily visible, and that's the bottom of the hull, so you can inspect that. And there's lots of other little hatches here, so you can look inside those. Now, one thing is how the boat's built. The whole boat is vacuum infused epoxy resin, which is top quality and saves on weight. In total, she displaces 11.5 tons metric, so 11,500 kilograms. And some of the strength of the hull obviously comes from the hull matrix, as you would expect, but in this boat it's a carbon matrix to save weight and add strength. And that goes all the way, bands of that go all the way up the side decks to the gunnels, to the chain plates where the shrouds attach, to really spread the keel and rig loads. The mast is keel stepped, so that comes down inside the cabin. So as with other boats in the sort of performance cruiser class, you've got a really strong, solid structure, a keel step mast, and loads that are properly dispersed, so you're not going to get flexing in the boat. So the hull is vacuum infused, it's got Divinycell core, and then the bulkheads. So one of the things that the 46 SQ has updated on the 46 is that the bulkheads are now cored laminate structures, and they are laminated into the hull, so they're really lightweight, but they're fully structural. So the aft bulkheads, the very far forward bulkhead, and the bulkhead between the forward cabin and the saloon are all structural to make the hull as stiff as possible. Engine access is really good. You lift up the steps on a gas strut, you come down, and in here we've got the Yanmar 57 horsepower, and 80 horsepower is optional. And if you look closely, you'll actually notice that the engine has been reversed, so that the sail drive is at the forward end of the engine. That's the lower part of the engine, so it makes a really good use of the diagonal sloping space here. You get access to the gearbox oil for the the oil filter and fuel filter for the engine. You go into the side access through the aft cabin, but that works really well as well. And then here on starboard side, you've got a little extra access panel for one of the filters and the water strainer as well. So that makes really good use of the space and takes up the minimum amount of space from the port aft cabin. So we've had a really fun day sailing on the Dehler 46 SQ. She's a good, enjoyable boat to sail that really rewards being sailed well. And when you get going, you really get going. We've charged around most of the time at 7, 8 or 9 knots. And it's been a bit blustery. We've really been able to put the boat through her paces, and I've loved it. Down below, she's really comfortable. They've worked really hard on improving some of the quality, and they've added in some really nice design features. All in all, she's a pretty sensible cruising boat. Somebody who's going to buy her is probably going to be after the sailing experience rather than just a floating apartment. And she's really good fun for cruising. She could race, but she's not really designed for that. She's designed for cruising fast and enjoyably. In terms of price, the base price for this is just over £330,000 sterling. When you add in sales and tax, you're looking at just shy of about £550,000 sterling. In dollars, that's about $635,000. I don't have that kind of money, but if I did, this would definitely be on my list.